Hi, Reverend Robin Hafitz here with a brief interfaith sermon, including readings from sacred texts from different spiritual traditions and reflections on what we can glean from these texts at this time. This is part of a series of sermons for this strange COVID-19 season, and you can see others if you look for Rev Robin Hafitz on YouTube. So may the words of my mouth and the expressions of all of our hearts be acceptable in the sight of that one, that oneness, who may be called God or Mother or Love or Brahman or something else or nothing at all, our source and grounding. Amen. I'm going to begin today with 8 lines of a sonnet by Gerard Manley Hopkins, who was a Victorian poet and Jesuit priest. I've shared ecstatic mystical poetry before, from Rumi, from Hafitz, but in this case, I'm sharing ecstatic Christian poetry. The poem is known by its first line, "As kingfishers catch fire." As kingfishers catch fire, dragonflies draw flame. As tumbled over rim and roundy wells stones ring, like each tucked string tells, each hung bell's bow swung finds tongue to fling out broad its name. Each mortal thing does one thing and the same, deals out that being indoors each one dwells. Selves, goes itself, myself, it speaks and spells, crying what I do is me, for that I came. In this poem, and I will read it again in its entirety, Hopkins shares a mystical realization, a revelation, about the nature of reality. Everything blazes and resounds in his vision, and everything is connected. Kingfishers catch not just fish, but fiery sunlight that sets them ablaze, and they are like dragonflies and stones thrown over the rim of a well, and the strings of musical instruments and bells, they're all alike. They all blaze and sound, expressing the spark that is within them, that is their true self. Hopkins invites us to think of that self, not just as a noun, but as a verb. Not just to think ourselves, of our pronouns, but of our actions, our selving. Because what we do is not just what we are, but what we came for, what we came to do. So how are you doing? How are you doing at human selving? Are you laughing? Are you loving? Are you lighting the way? Are you tending your inner light? It's hard in these days of doubt and dread, and so very, very much death. But can we selve better? Can we deal out that inner spark within us more purely? My second reading also addresses that question. As I have in past sermons, I consulted the I Ching for this one, that ancient Chinese oracle that was beloved by Confucius, and I received a reading that I've talked about before. Hexagram 50, the cauldron. It's an image of fire above and wood below, but the placement of the broken and straight lines also creates an image of a ting, a Chinese vessel with 3 legs and 2 handles that was used for religious ceremonies in the temples of the ancestors. This hexagram and the well are the only 2 of the 64 in the I Ching that represent human-made objects. The well is about giving nourishment to the people. The ting, the cauldron, is about giving nourishment to the divine. Fire over wood, the ting. The wood serves as nourishment for the flame, the spirit. And we read, the cauldron, supreme good fortune, success. Earthly values must be sacrificed to the divine. But the truly divine does not manifest itself apart from living beings. The supreme revelation of the divine appears in the prophets and the holy ones. Divine will, fate, as revealed through them, should be accepted in humility. This brings inner enlightenment and leads to great good fortune and success. This is a time for readjusting our individual relationships with the cosmos. There are areas in life and nature that are fated. This is not an easy concept for Western minds to accept. But acceptance can lead to great personal power and success. If you can harmonize your aims and desires with the needs and flow of the cosmos, significant deeds become possible. All that is visible must grow beyond itself and extend into the realm of the invisible. There it receives its true consecration and clarity and takes firm root in the cosmic order. This reading has a certain kinship with Hopkins' poem, and not only because they both mention wells. Both speak of that divine spark which is within mortal, material things, finding its way outward. Where Hopkins describes what each thing does, how it selves, as being that for which it came, for which it was fated, this hexagram invites us to lean into those actions that align us with our fate, with cosmic order, by nourishing the divine, nourishing our higher nature. So what can you do to feed your flame? Sing a song? Tell a joke? Read a poem? Write one? As I promised, I'm going to read Hopkins' sonnet again, this time the whole thing. I generally change gendered language in my readings, and you'll hear Hopkins refer here in the final lines to God as Father and to people as men. I'm not going to change the language this time because it would change the rhythm. I hope you'll forgive this mystical poet, as I have, for being of his time, a closeted gay man in the Victorian era, for the sake of the beauty of the words. He speaks here of Jesus and of the idea that Christ consciousness is within us all, that the divine is not apart from us, but within us, that Atman is Brahman, as the Hindus say, or that as above, so below, as below, so above, as a meditation teacher told me. And again, as kingfishers catch fire, dragonflies draw flame, as tumbled over rim and roundy well stones ring, like each tucked string tells, each hung bell's bow swung finds tongue to fling out broad its name. Each mortal thing does one thing in the same, deals out that being indoors each one dwells, selves, goes itself, myself it speaks and spells, crying what I do is me, for that I came. I say more, the just man justices, keeps grace, that keeps all his goings graces, acts in God's eye what in God's eye he is, Christ. For Christ plays in 10,000 places, lovely in limbs, and lovely in eyes not his, to the Father, through the features of men's faces. Hopkins and the Ching invite us to see ourselves as verbs, selving, justicing, keeping grace, growing beyond the visible into the invisible, honoring and allowing ourselves to receive, to experience our true consecration and clarity as beings that are rooted in the divine order. So I ask the divine to help me, to help you, to help us, keep moving and acting in our fated ways, in our ways that express and honor the divine fire within us, to keep justicing, to keep doing the right thing, to keep gracing, to keep lighting the way, and ringing out the good news that we are all connected to each other, to everything in this material reality, and to all that is beyond. Help us to know ourselves and to act as we are in the eyes of the divine, part of the divine, within and without, surrounded by divine love. Amen.